Hi, I'm Pastor Adam Peck from Holy Cross Lutheran Church, and I'd like to welcome you to Marriage Momentum, a 3-session mini retreat for you and your spouse to take a look and take some time to work on your marriage. We understand one of the biggest challenges in a marriage is finding the time to be about investing in your marriage in a way that's helpful to you. There's so many things pulling you in so many different directions, and so we want to give you the gift of this time to work together. So you can expect a time together here that's partly some encouragement, partly some ideas to think about your marriage differently, and largely some time for you and your spouse to talk to one another, to work through some things. So I want to welcome you into this. This is the first of our 3 sessions, one on communication. And as we think about communication, this isn't going to be a time where we're bashing men for not being good listeners or bashing them for not being women. Let's be honest, fellas. You uniquely get to be who you are. And in all of these sessions, you're going to find that we look at men for who they are and women for who they are and the blessings that they bring to a marriage. Now, whether you're a man or a woman, communication is essential in this relationship, and we need to communicate. We find that the way that we communicate is partly through the words that we communicate, partly through our tone of voice, and partly through our nonverbals. And I wonder, take a guess just for a second here. You've got a sheet of paper in front of you there. Maybe if you're doing this online, you've printed that out. I'd encourage you to do so. And take a guess, what percentage of the communication is verbal? How much of it is the actual words? How much of it is the tone of voice? And how much of it is nonverbal? Just take a couple seconds now and take a guess at each one of those. They add up to 100 altogether. Okay, so the actual words are 7% of the message. The tone of voice is 38% of the message, which leaves 55% of our communication being stuff that is non-verbal. So what does that mean that when you just send a text to one another, just write a note, just drop an email, you're only getting 7% of the communication across? If you're talking on the phone, you only get the 7 plus the 38. It's in talking in person, in seeing one another's posture and the look on their face, that you get the most out of it. So I encourage you, as we begin to look at communication, and as we're going to be about some communication here, that you be paying attention to all of those things, that you might get the full message of what's there.
I'm so happy you're joining us for these marriage sessions. I'm Deb Shane, Director of Adult Ministry here at Holy Cross. If you're following along on the handout that we had for you, we have a couple more blanks for you to fill in. So the next blank is communication is always happening. Even silence conveys information as a way to communicate. We know the difference between that comfortable silence when we're just driving in the car, being very comfortable together, silently sitting on the couch next to each other. And we also know the difference of that tension silence, where one or both of us is upset and anybody walking into that room can just feel the tension in that room. So even our silence portrays communication. As a young married woman, newly married, I was watching many different marriages and learning what to do and what not to do. And we spent quite a bit of time with my in-laws. They lived near us, and bless their hearts, they are both passed away now, but they were terrible communicators, and I learned a lot of what not to do. And one specific instance was about buying a new car, and my mother-in-law decided she needed a new car, went to the car lot, drove through it, picked out the car, didn't talk to anybody at the car lot, and came home, and in as few words as possible said to my father-in-law, I want a new car, I picked it out, it's at the lot, it's the 4th one in from the end facing 28th Street. So, being the good husband that he was, he, the next day, grabbed his wad of money in his sock drawer, drove to the car lot, picked out the 4th car from the end facing 28th Street, and bought it and drove it home. Now he's driving home and he's thinking, I am really great. I'm gonna make so many points. I did what she wanted. I got the car she wanted. He drives in the driveway with the wrong car. Because at car lots, they are constantly changing their cars around. So, as she's coming out of the house, she's saying, you should have known I didn't want a four-door. You should have known I wanted silver car. You should have known this, this, and this. How would he have known? Because it was not communicated. So I have learned that I need to be very specific and clear in my communications with my husband. Our next blank we have is many couples have a tendency to assume they know each other. We neglect to ask questions and continue to learn about each other as we have many more years of marriage. Scott and I have been married 30 years, and I remember specifically about 15 years ago, we were in a social setting and the topic of food came up, and we were talking about food, and Scott shares in this group that he doesn't like Miracle Whip, he likes mayonnaise. I had bought Miracle Whip for 15 years. I was completely horrified. Now that might seem like a little thing, but to me, I was upset and I did not know that he didn't like that. Several weeks later, again in another different social setting, he told people he didn't like apple pie. That was my go-to pie. I would buy that pie, I would make that pie. He didn't like it. How awful. I felt that this man I had been living with for 15 years, I didn't know that about him. Now those are just minor things, but it really got me thinking, what else don't I know about this man that I have committed to spend the rest of my life with?
Just like Deb was saying about the communication and missing some things along the way, even though they had been working at it and thought they were communicating well, sometimes despite our best efforts, we miss. And it's partly because men and women's brains are wired differently. Take a look at this next little video that, it's a humorous way of looking at how uniquely we've been made and how we each need to work in special ways to make sure we understand the other one well.